Hey guys, what is up? My name is PandaMaster, and welcome to my spoiler-free review of Episode 9 of WandaVision, the series finale. WandaVision. Let's talk about it. I stayed up, I watched it early because some Disney Plus intern dropped it like 10 minutes early. So I started watching early, got ahead of the curve. And, because I knew I was going to get absolutely demolished on Twitter the next day if I didn't watch it immediately. So I made sure to stay up and watch this finale. And so, okay. So overall, going to say it right now. Rating, 8 out of 10. Entire series rating, 8 out of 10. I think there are some really, really amazing moments in this episode, in this show. And I think there are some other ones that were kind of meh. Again, in this episode and in this show. So, let's talk about it. Again, I'm keeping things spoiler free, but White Vision, hella interesting. Story isn't necessarily resolved with that, and I don't know what that means. And I'm very curious to know if this was an error or if it was deliberate, and I don't know what to think of it. Secondly, there's 2 post-credit scenes. There's a mid-credit scene and a post-credit scene. If you haven't seen the episode yet, be sure to stay, because the post-credits scene especially is super, super interesting. Third, again, I think this show suffered from all of the hype surrounding it, because there were all these theories that I think this finale inevitably felt like a letdown compared to what everybody was saying. And it's interesting because the only similar experience we've had in the MCU thus far, not including the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV show, and I guess Agent Carter as well, would be Infinity War and Endgame, right? Like, everybody was theorizing, and like to an extent we still kind of people are theorizing about No Way Home or Multiverse of Madness and all this stuff, but not to this extent of we have these cliffhangers that we're now trying to figure out what is happening next, that we haven't really seen since Infinity War and Endgame. And obviously Endgame, for the most part, I personally loved it. I know some people didn't, but the vast majority of people really, really loved Endgame, and it paid off. But that was also a massive undertaking. And so, where you have all of these Disney Plus TV shows, are they all expected then to pull Avengers Endgames? That's not exactly something you can replicate over and over and over and over again. And so that's sort of like a, every once in a while type situation, not all the time. And so it's one of those things where, because I've seen some people talking about what if they just release them all at once versus a weekly basis, which is interesting. I personally hate it. I like having this discourse of a weekly discussion versus an entire season at once. I think some are more better suited to it. For instance, Cobra Kai. I think it's a very bingeable type of show where you can just sit and watch it. Whereas I feel like shows like WandaVision more benefit from the weekly format in terms of just how they are. They're not to say that Cobra Kai isn't a deep show, because you can go in depth into all those episodes, right? But I think in a show like this, which has a lot of references, comic books and this and that, and everything's big, it does it better to just really tear apart episode by episode. And I think it benefits from that. But like I said, I don't think it does benefit on all of this discourse, because people really hyped it up. And I really feel bad for the showrunners at this point to just try to manage expectations. Jacqueline Schaefer, I really feel bad for her, just trying to keep people calm and be like, hey, this is not, chill a little bit here. And Matt Shackman, I think, but I still think it was a great ending. I know, I can already tell that this episode is going to be divisive for some. I still think it ended off great. I think if there had been no expectations going into this finale. I think everyone would have loved it. I think it is solely because of expectations that, you know, we are going to have some people that are less enthused about this finale. I think, you know, Agatha's character development wraps up nicely. Wanda definitely. And, you know, the biggest thing here is I love the character development we've seen with Wanda and Scarlet Witch and all of that thus far. I think that is easily the strongest part of the show. And again, I think if you were to remove this from the MCU, it would be a much, much stronger show because, you know, that's essentially what this is. This is kind of an aside. But, you know, I think being the first big project after Endgame that wasn't Far From Home, which is kind of like, you know, like it's the first MCU project we've seen in a long time, and especially after Endgame and everything, you know, it's got some big expectations, which it wasn't supposed to have. We were supposed to get Falcon and Winter Soldier first, and before that we were supposed to get Black Widow and all these other things, and so it's hard to lead up something like that, like Endgame and even Far From Home, which apparently a lot of people don't like, but Far From Home I absolutely loved. I'm a huge Spider-Man fan, so I know I'm biased, but I loved Far From Home. But, you know, it's hard to follow that up. So, really, WandaVision had a tough go of it. Again, I don't think it was a perfect show. I think it has, and I've mentioned before, it has pacing issues. But I think, you know, as, like I said, an aside, I think it works really, really well, and there's some cool stuff. And we see some really cool returns from the MCU, and I think, you know, sort of acting as that showcase for things that might not necessarily get the time we want them to in the movies. I think this is a perfect medium to do that in, right? Because you have things like WandaVision where it's like, you know, they probably couldn't greenlight a Scarlet Witch movie or a Vision movie, and so they're like, we'll make a show and then we'll incorporate her more, like we'll have this do this and then we'll expand upon it even more in Doctor Strange, and then you also see, I think it'd be interesting, I don't think they could do it, but man, what about a Hulk TV show? You know, like, can they do that? Because they can't make Hulk movies because of Universal, but what about Hulk TV shows? Can they make TV shows? Probably not, but that would be cool too. Just like, you know, something that they don't want to devote an entire movie to or don't think a movie would be successful. Just do it, and like, that's basically what they're doing. They've got Falcon and Winter Soldier, they've got What If, they've got Loki, they've got She-Hulk, Moon Knight, Hawkeye, you know, all these things. I think it's a really good idea because, you know, if it is good, they can just keep it going. If it's not, it's just a little one-off, and then they can continue. You know, it's not. I feel like it's a safer bet. Although they spent a lot of money on this show. I saw that reportedly they spent $25 million per episode. That is more expensive than like any MCU movie minus Avengers. Like, minus the big ones, the big Avengers movies, right? In totality, with these 9 episodes. And granted, I think this is one of the longer MCU shows. I think most of them are like 6 episodes. I'm actually going to double check that because I'm curious. But I think, yeah, most of them are 6. She-Hulk is going to be 10, so that's interesting. I wonder if they'll be shorter. But yeah, most of them are 6. However, WandaVision has also been all over the place in terms of runtimes. So, you know, we'll see what goes on there. But yeah, it's a lot of money they're pulling into this. For comparison, you know, people were going nuts about how much Game of Thrones Season 8 was costing. That was $15 million per episode. This is $10 million more than that. It's almost double. Is almost double what they spent on Game of Thrones Season 8, and everybody went nuts. So, I'm just saying, like, oh my gosh, they're spending so much money on here, it's gonna be so cool, and then it sucked, you know. But, yeah, they dumped a ton of money into this, and so, you know, like I said, I think it has a lot of potential. Like I said, I think they have some things they need to iron out. It ends, I don't know, I didn't think the pacing was really bad this episode. I was worried about it ending, like, you know, they had to wrap things up really quickly, But it didn't. I didn't feel that bad. I thought we had a satisfying conclusion. But I do still have questions that I'm curious to hear or see. If there's reason for this, because with the MCU, at this point, it's like things come back like from all over the place now. So it's like if something is not wrapped up, I don't automatically go, "Oh, shame on them." It's more so, "Oh, we're going to see that later," which might be their way of doing a cop out. I don't know. But yeah, that's just I kind of don't really fault the MCU for that anymore, because they usually bring them back. And maybe that's their way of fixing plot holes or fixing those things. I don't know. But either way, it does fix it, so, in the end. So any sort of thing that isn't resolved, I'm just like, oh, well, we'll hear about that later. But there are some things like that in this show. Nothing super big. Most of the major questions get answered, but there are some things that I'm like, But then it's like, well, the MCU never really ends, so I can't really say, like, oh, this doesn't get wrapped up, because it's technically not over. But, it's sort of it's your own opinion sort of thing. But yeah, I think this had a great end. Not amazing, but I think for their first dive into the TV space in earnest, as Marvel Studios, I think this is a great start, and I'm curious to see how they continue to go from here. And I'm sure they've listened to a lot of feedback and will incorporate that into future shows. I mean, Falcon and Winter Soldier is going to be a very different show, and I think they, did that on purpose, because if they were to make a similar, like two similar shows back to back, if people didn't like one, they weren't going to like the other. So, I think both WandaVision and Falcon and Winter Soldier are kind of their test dummies, and in a sense also Loki as well, because that's also kind of done, but they might be able to make some changes in post. But for Ms. Marvel and Hawkeye and, all the other future ones, I think they were looking closely at the reception to WandaVision in order to shape those. And so I'm really excited to see the future of this, because I love the MCU, and I'll always be here to talk about it and have some fun with it, and hopefully you guys will be here too. So let me know what you guys thought of the finale down in the comments. Like if you like this video, subscribe if you want to see more. I'll see you guys next time for whatever it is I'm doing. Alright? See ya.